I said in my note to you, Andrew Hay has directed a film that's a contender for awards this season. It's called All of Us Strangers. It's a very unique film. A young man returns to the home he grew up in to encounter the spirits of his parents. And it's all about dealing with that through a gay lover he meets in the small town in England. And it's got very good notices. And this director is really somebody to watch. And I think maybe we'll get some sense of that. So in this film, so that when you see the next film, you'll appreciate his work more. He's very smart. He's very sensitive. And, I talk a lot about understatement. And this film is sort of like very Asian in its understated qualities, in that we know what she's feeling in every scene, but she doesn't say it. You see that? No, you can't hear me. Of course, it's backwards. How about this? Okay. If they can't get on, I'll let you do the hatchet work in a few minutes, because we can't have these interruptions. I'm sorry. Give them 5 minutes to notice you or look at their email. Oh, they're on now. So let's see. Where are they? They're not in the participants list. How is that possible?
Because they just left. They just signed off.
Okay. Well, next time they're in.
And out. If
Yeah.
Hannah,
Okay.
Hannah Goal, if you could call them, it would help.
Yeah. Do you have their phone number, Hannah? I do not.
I will do my best to find it right now.
Thank you. All right, let's get on with the group. So, I was talking about the understatement of this film, in that she doesn't say a lot, but you know what she's feeling because she's a very good actor, and she's always responding to the scene before. And it doesn't need to be said, because this is not a film. It's not a psychotherapy film. It's not it's an intimate film, but it doesn't explain everything. It slowly parcels out the facts of what happened to him before they met. But I found it fascinating when I first saw it about 5 years ago. And I really wanted to play here. Look, all of us look like we've been in long-term relationships, or most of us. And you know what it's like to get a surprise like this late in the relationship, don't you? You would feel betrayed. You feel like, oh, I was living a lie. And the issue of this film is, can she live with that? Live with him with that? What is she going to do? So let's refrain from describing the last scene until we run out of time, because that's really what the film is about, is the very last moments of the film. Yes, Doris, you're muted. You're muted.
I don't know about the others, but I have a terrible time trying to understand them. It was very soft, and it was just mumbled. I had a horrible time the first half of the movie. I just kind of had to guess what they were saying.
Yeah.
It's just so frustrating to not be able to know what they're saying, and they're speaking English, but not very well.
Let me solve all your problems. If you go into the settings when you get the Amazon Prime film up, you can trigger the English subtitles. I watch foreign films with subtitles.
With the English subtitles?
Yeah, it really helps, and you don't feel estranged from it.
I'll do that next time, but
Yeah,
at the end of the movie, it started to get a little clearer, but God, I was frustrated the first half of that movie.
Of course. I mean, that dialogue was carefully written.
Yeah.
Somebody else have a question? I saw a hand wave. No. Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
There's nothing to do.
Hannah, chat them. They're on board. It slowly parcels out this nice little ex-urban home they live in. The mailman was a student of hers. We get that, we learned she was a school teacher at one point. And then she goes in, she finds him sitting at the table looking kind of addled. And that's the rest of the film. It parcels out its information. He receives the letter in the post. It's in German. And it's about my Katja, not Katja, my Katja. And he seems a little dazed, doesn't he? Like he's early stages of Alzheimer's. He has had a bypass surgery 5 years before. We only learned that in the final scene at the party where he says that the last party was postponed. And we don't really know much about the relationship yet. And she's okay with the letter, but it's in German and he's got to look it up. So that's where they go to the garage to find a German dictionary. And then she takes a trip to the venue, which announces the ultimate end of the film. She's touring the bar mitzvah hall. Think of it that way. And she's not impressed with the this and the that. She said, it's just a party. Don't make too big a thing of this, which I found very cute. You know, this is a seasoned woman who knows what's important. It's just our anniversary. And she comes home, she finds that he's cut his finger trying to fix the toilet. And so she fixes his finger in the bathroom and they have dinner. And then the first hint of a confession comes out. That's a dinner scene at night. And this is where the issue of next of kin comes out. Why are you receiving this letter? I'm next of kin. And Kate, the Charlotte Rampling character, says, what? How could you be next of kin? You were just girlfriend and boyfriend. And he explains to her, what did he explain? Do you remember? Carol?
His explanation is those times were different. We were staying together and we had to pretend we were married, and she even wore a wooden ring.
Right. And when she died, she had the ring on and he had to continue with the falsehood. So that's why he was next of kin. And that kind of holds her off for a while. And she says, I can't be cross for something that happened before our marriage or before we exist. She said, before we existed. So she didn't just say before our marriage. It's we as a unit existed. I mean, you could say that's what marriage means. But the wording is, I think, very particular there. But what bothers her, she says, is the lack of discussion. We've never talked about it since.
Yeah.
I mean, so many films that we've seen and so many experiences in our life are about relatives who aren't communicative. They don't share enough. And I know that's my parents and my family in a nutshell. And it provokes a certain amount of disappointment and anger and distance, you know. Yet here's a woman who's been, she thought, in love with her husband for 45 years. And suddenly this distance is thrust upon her. So that's the impact of that scene. That happens 19 minutes in to a 95-minute film. So it's 20% of the way into the film already. And that's when he says, how about a little cuddle in bed after their dinner? And she does agrees to that willingly, and she turns onto his chest. And in bed, they have this conversation about the map of the mountains and the guide. And he let them walk ahead. And they were laughing. That's all he could hear about the laughter. He's retelling the story. And he found her laughter a little annoying. He doesn't really say why. And I think Charlotte Rampling at one point suggests, well, maybe the guide was flirting with her and you were jealous. And then he hears the scream. And it's not like anything that's ever come out of her mouth before. And that's where she says, we've never talked about this part of it before. Why? You know, what does this say about our relationship? And it's when you're hungry for information, it's not just the information you crave an explanation for why you were deprived of it. What does it mean about you and where you are with your life? That's Monday. The party's on Saturday, right? You may have noticed the daily demarcations. So they go to tea in town and they talk about how memories are important. And they dance, I think. They dance. Ah, yeah, that's just before the sex scene, Tuesday night. Didn't you know they tried to have sex on Tuesday night? And he can't quite accomplish it. And she's very forgiving. And he's kind of upset. But, you know, it's a failed attempt. And she feels bad for him and goes to sleep. And then she's awakened by what? sounds in the attic. No, it's not the squirrels from under the roof. It's something she can't quite identify. So she gets out of bed and she goes into the kitchen and she hears something through the trapdoor for the attic. And he hands down to her on the ladder a picture. So you see, here's a picture of her. And it's just a picture. So she's okay with it. She's a little concerned because he's upset, but it doesn't really, at 40 minutes in, she questions the picture and she questions her anger. And then there's that lovely shot of her walking the dog in the fog. And, it's like the dog is significant in not many ways, but it's an emblem of, or metaphor for their relationship. They've known each other intimately for years, but the dog's never said a word to her. You develop feelings for a creature just out of empathy and shared experience, regardless of the past. Yeah, Carol.
Just a note on the dog. As you were talking about it, yes, it was part of their country life and walking the dog. But when they didn't find any photographs, that they failed to take photographs of their 45 years together, they talked about this dog, let's call him Alfie, when he was a puppy.
Yeah.
And then they didn't have children, which becomes important later in the story.
Yeah, of course, the dog is not 45 years old. I think it's a dog they had
A
previously.
different dog, right?
Also a German Shepherd.
But not children
No,
as they grew.
right.
So that's why the dog seemed to have an extra.
It's their child, and dogs have been their children throughout their relationship. Right, good point. And this film, it has beautiful visual moments that are subtle like that. And it is idyllic. I mean, God, wouldn't you love to live in that house? No, too remote, Carol. You have to drive into town to get your tea and your, okay. There's a song about, it's kind of like young filmmaker comment. Girl, I can't get you out of my mind, right? Classic 60s song. And that ends the scene after this point somewhere. I just have a note. And it's so on the nose for what the film is about. So I thought that was charming. We're 40 minutes in and not a lot has happened, has it? She discovers more about the dead girlfriend. But there's more to be discovered that really upsets her. This is just the facts, right? And she's still pretty much in love and at ease, and she's honchoing the anniversary party. She goes to the venue alone, and she's got to contact the band and the flowers and all that. It's almost like a wedding. And then she goes to lunch on the boat with some of the old ladies. I'm not sure what that's about. But afterwards, she sits alone on the deck. And there are a lot of scenes like this where she's just alone with herself and her thoughts, and she's not happy. There's something eating at her. And this is what I mean by understatement. I think it got to be a little much in this film, but that's what he's driving at. There's something gnawing away at her. And we don't quite know what it is. She doesn't quite know what it is. And there are these moments, not just when she's alone, but she pauses and she's lost in thought. That was at 44 minutes, and at 50 minutes they're in bed again, and they discuss how when your life is filled with purpose, you don't need to go anywhere, you don't need to do anything. That's what he says. And I think and this is what hurts her about it, his life was filled with purpose with the first woman. It didn't matter, as long as he could wake up and have a day with her, it didn't matter what he did. He was so happy. And that's when she says, if she had lived, would you have married her? And he dodges the question. And finally he says, yes. And what's her reaction? What's the usual reaction? She turns over in bed and says, I can't talk about this anymore. And, so she has her own limits in how much she can discuss. It's like we talk about enabling relationships and, who's the addict and who's the enabler. Or the codependent. This is a small illustration of that. She's pressing him and she can't get it out of him. She's really on the hunt now. And this is 52 minutes in to a film. It's more than halfway through. Right. So it's taking its time, isn't it? But it's creating, I think, empathy. I mean, did you care about either character at this point? Anybody?
I felt sorry for her.
Yeah. What about him? Do you think he was mean? I mean, you had no idea where this was going, did you?
Well, I did not find him a very sympathetic figure, regardless of his feelings from the past. I mean, he's certainly insensitive to her, and that I found that a little hard to deal with.
And why did she tolerate it? So did you question her?
Well,
Loves him.
well, she was in a
let's
lot
see.
of pain. I mean, she loved him, but she had a lot of anger toward him, and she was frustrated. Unless she was going to walk away, she felt she just had to deal with it, or
So are you saying that yes, you were with her and you understood her frustration, and as a result, his role in it became less important, or did you excuse him? Or you said you didn't care for him because he shut her out.
I just didn't like the guy.
Okay. Okay. Susie?
I found it hard to understand why someone who's married to a woman for 45 years would be so insensitive about how she would react to this information.
Well,
He almost
men are
like-
from Mars; they're not from Venus. The ladies will get that.
Well, I know, but still, I mean, he goes up into the cellar and he's not making a secret of his kind of obsession with the past, and he keeps talking in strange ways about the woman who had passed away and their moments together. And I mean, how would this make your partner feel? I mean, there's ways to talk about things without.
I know. I mean, I occasionally I'll mention a past relationship I've had before we met, and she hates to hear about it. And even though I say they were learner relationships, and God, I dodged a bullet, and I'm so glad I'm with you, and it doesn't help. They don't want to know that you had a prior life.
Well,
Kimberly, does this ring true with you?
no, my
Okay.
my wife isn't particularly shy about knowing about other women I may have known in the past or relationships, but there's still a graceful and sensitive way to discuss issues without hurting someone else's feelings. And I just found him oblivious to that.
He was.
Maybe that's because he had dementia or something like that.
Yeah.
Early
A couple of hands are raised. So first Lisa and then Betty.
Susie.
I was just going to say he was a
Sorry, Susie, you're next. Go ahead.
I was just going to say he's he's not fully into this relationship with his own wife. He's a very quiet guy, stays in the background, doesn't help with the dog. There's no love between him and the dog. And I had the same thing you had, as far as Stanley had a prior love relationship, high school relationship, not even college, but high school.
Mhm.
And she turned out not to want him because he wasn't orthodox enough. Time goes on and we get holiday cards from her every year.
Yeah.
One year we get a card, she's in front, she's wearing all white, and she's in front of the ark. And it's post-bar mitzvah of her oldest of 4 sons, and the 4 sons are around her, and she's in this thing that looks like a wedding thing. And Stanley said, "Oh, doesn't she look beautiful?" And I tore the card up. Okay. So the next thing that happens is I get a call from I call to speak to him. He's in his office, and the secretary, with whom I'm very friendly, he's a guy, and he says he's busy right now. There's someone in the office with him. I said, "Oh, who?" He said, "Well, apparently an old girlfriend."
Oh my God.
I said, "Open
Oh my
the door. Open the door to the office. I'm not interested." Time goes on, and she becomes a rabbi. a Reconstructionist rabbi, and she writes to us with this great news, and Stanley's all excited. And oh God, where's this going? We're in Israel, and she writes that she's in Israel and knows we're there. They were studying together at Hartman Institute. And I went to meet her. I liked her very much. And the end of the story is we've all become very good friends. I like her a lot. And it could have gone the other way. It started out with, what the hell do I have to get postcards with New Year's cards with you with your sons? But it was his reaction that upset me, which is exactly what upset
Kate.
Yeah. And the other thing is, how did he know the picture was up there and exactly where it was? So that's a problem for me.
Yeah, well, we all keep photographs in the basement or the upstairs, but what's he doing? Why does she? You're right. She's at the bottom of the ladder there. Why does she let it go? Why doesn't she probe further? And I can't answer that. I can't answer it. I mean, there's a lot of questions like that about, real people wouldn't let this go, that much. And we'll have something to say about that later. Susie, you have something to say.
I do have something to say. The age of the couple, don't you think they were in their late 60s?
I think they're 70s.
In their 70s. Okay, I lived on a very, very small island in the south of England, just past Southampton and whatever. It's called the Isle of Wight. And you would have thought it was the 1940s on that island. There were either young families that I taught school, and then there were major seniors. I have to say the mentality, they were very smart people, but they were so closed-minded. You could hardly say the word toilet with them because they were just very there was no like being in the city where everything is open and stuff. There's something about the countryside that people become ingrained in just the countryside. And I felt that's something that we should think about in his personality. She was much more outgoing in her ability she did share her feelings. She did tell him not to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Everything is compartmentalized. That's one issue that I wanted to bring up. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was he came out, and I know we're getting ahead of his speech at the party, but that said it all about him. And I think that the whole plot of the movie could have been told with her face. She projected to me every single thing that we're talking about on her face. When she was doing those solo walks, when she was walking the dog, when she was on the name of they call that the high street in her town. She was brilliant. She really told the story in her face. I liked the movie a lot.
Betty, you're muted, Betty. Unmute. Lower left corner.
Got it. Sorry. I think I saw this a little bit differently than a lot of the people. I didn't have such negative feelings about the husband. I think when somebody dies very young, they are often idealized, and they weren't even married, but they were planning to get married, and I don't think that's such an unusual thing. Often when a parent dies, that parent was the perfect parent, but that parent never had a chance to really raise them. So I didn't have the negative feeling that a lot of people had. I mean, I could certainly understand why the wife was upset, and but I did feel that they both really loved each other, and I think it was just, quite a shock, when it's been all those years, and you assume you're never going to hear anything more, and all of a sudden they found this woman that he thought he was going to marry. I just didn't find it that surprising, and I thought he was trying to protect her. I agree. There wasn't, the communication that maybe we would have wanted, but I saw him, she did say, don't talk about it. And when he went up into the attic, it was when she was sleeping, I don't think he wasn't the most sensitive person, but I didn't think he was that insensitive either.
Well, I think you nailed it. He was protecting himself. He was embarrassed about it because he knew he had this other relationship in his life and he knew it would hurt her, which is why he went into the attic and she didn't know he was looking at pictures of the girlfriend.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something else. It's interesting. My brother-in-law's wife died, and he married somebody whose husband had died, and then she told me, she said one of the reasons that they're very comfortable with each other is that they can both talk about their previous spouses and they don't feel threatened by it. I think there's more of a threat when one person has a previous relationship or spouse that had a good relationship, not a divorce, but a good relationship, than when they both do.
I have good friends who are like that couple. They both lost a spouse, and now they're in their 70s, and they met recently within the last year.
Mm.
And we socialize with them all the time, and it's great. And they do try. He talks about his previous wife and his daughter in front of her all the time, and here's why he can do it. They went on a vacation together to Greece.
Mm.
Right? And while they're in Greece, the daughter pulls the new girlfriend aside and says, I'm so glad my father found you. You've made him so happy. And I miss my mother, but I'm so glad you're in our family. And whoa, what a great vacation that was. And it like, when things like that are said, it's like it changes the complexion of your relationship. It changes the relationship into not a distant relationship, but an intimate one, because you bare your soul. And these people didn't. It doesn't mean they didn't love each other.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it to hurt her, but he just had this private part of himself he wasn't ready to share. Carol?
I have had my hand up. Have you seen me?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't. Judy, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I was going to say what Betty just described is the Golden Bachelor. I don't know if anybody saw it, but that's how they ended up together because they had that in common.
Yeah.
So I computed their ages because there were little hints. She says at one point that she was 20 when they met. And we know they've been married for 45 years. So assuming they got married within the first year, she's somewhere in the neighborhood of 66. He also says that at the time that he lost his girlfriend, he was 27. So we know that he's at least 7 years older than she, maybe a little more. So I was just going to say that. I saw the movie when it first came out, and in my memory, which is obviously not correct, I remembered that she left him at the end, and I was waiting till the last.
No, we're not going there. We're not going there. Okay. That's a very important part of the film and of the story this director chose to tell.
Okay. Sorry.
Carol.
I really appreciate everyone's reflections on this. I had a different take on the husband's deception. 27 or 17, I felt when he got this letter, I don't know how many times before that letter in their 45 years, and it was 50 years since the lover died in Switzerland, that he had been up in the attic. But when he got the letter, it seemed to reactivate the trauma of death.
Yep, right.
We learn later it's more than a death. don't want to jump, but it's more than one death. The trauma, who knows how he dealt with it at the time. The fact that he never mentioned it to his wife is the real deception. I would be hurt. I wouldn't feel I wasn't loved, but he had a huge problem with this reactivation of unprocessed grief. And it didn't make him a terrible person. I don't know enough about other aspects of his life, but that was a terrible omission. That was huge.
Right.
So I feel that this was grief that was overpowering. He wasn't in his right thinking. He wasn't in his right mind after that letter.
No, it sort of sent him into another world of self-indulgence. You know, he almost was blind to her. Because he like she was dwelling in the betrayal, he was dwelling in the past, you know, and surrounding himself with that. And they couldn't see each other because of that. Let's move on if there are no more comments. Risa, did you have another? No, put your hand.
Just that I think that it's different if you know about a prior girlfriend of your spouse, and if you know that they've been intimate, which has been proven by the pregnancy.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think the pregnancy has a lot to do.
We're coming up to that. You're right. It changes after that because
Yeah.
that means, you know, it's okay. He said, yeah, I would have married her had she lived.
Right. But
She doesn't know then that it's partly because of the child they shared. So let's move on. So she can't.
one more thing. Do you think that she died accidentally?
Well,
Yes.
that's the question, isn't it? It's not really solved. He's around the corner, so he didn't see it. And she suggests, well, maybe the guide was hitting on her and maybe she jumped, but he heard her laughter moments before.
Oh, that's interesting. You say jump. I was thinking
Well,
pushed.
Yeah.
Or pushed, right? No, or pushed. I mean,
There's a difference.
we can't
Yeah.
know this.
No,
But
we
the only
can't.
key
But
we
it's a
have is he's
question.
laughing one moment and screaming the next. So to me, that says accident. You know, we don't know anything else about the guide. He's just the guy who could read the maps. Okay, so moving on.
Jim, can I just interject? I had my hand up. Apparently you didn't see it. I think one of the appealing things about the film is that they're both very human. I mean, we've been sort of examining him and his deception, but the fact is that she's somewhat culpable too. I mean, she clearly wants to know what happened. She wants to know more about it. Yet she refuses over and over again to confront him directly. And so she's not faultless in all of this. It took two to kind of,
Well,
you know, to keep this pretense going.
right, it's a folie à deux.
And so what I'm trying to say here is that they're both human.
Yeah,
They both have their faults, and that's partly what makes the film so interesting.
right. I mean, she knew there was something there she didn't want to hear, and she couldn't bear to press further. So she's avoiding the truth. And he's too lost to see her need to know the truth, and also a little ashamed because he knows his first love was this other woman. There's a bit of a jump in the storyline here. After she watches the window for the wind, you know, there's a scene where the wind kicks up. That means trouble in metaphorical film talk. And then she drives him to the factory for a lunch. And then she's alone for her own lunch at home. And she goes to the attic, and that's where she pulls the ladder down. She sees the album, the diary with notes and letters to Katya. She starts reading them. And then she starts projecting. She notices the projector. And this is a very clever scene. It's projected on this linen tablecloth, you know, and you see the stitching in it, the crocheting. And that's in the right side of the screen. So we're like behind that, but we're watching her on the left side of the screen, watching the front of the linen tablecloth. So we get both at the same time. We get her reaction and the source of her reaction. This is like a two-shot in films. You want to say a two-person shot. It's really it's more than 2 for 1 because you get cause and effect in the same frame. It's really good filmmaking. And you know, we go through the pictures. This attractive woman. She seems to be kind of charismatic. She certainly loves the person who's taking the pictures, right? She's always smiling at them. There's a lot of crappy shots that have nobody in them that were like photographic mistakes. We all have those. We shot those. And then she comes upon the one where she's holding her belly. And that's the giveaway. Oh, this is a turning point. And that happens, 60 minutes in or so. So it's more than halfway. And her reaction is one of agitation. She doesn't know how to deal with it. She goes downstairs to the kitchen and she's just beside herself. And then the DJ calls, "What's the playlist for the party?" And she fumbles through that. It's all these 60s hits. And she's clearly distracted. And then he returns home from wherever he was and for lunch. Oh, and she asks him, "Did you take your pills?" And there's one point, a very lovely scene where she just reaches up to the trap door for the attic and she's almost touches it. You know, she wants to connect with that story, but she can't.
Jim, could you go back to the scrapbook?
Yeah, sure. Do you not remember that? She opens it up and there are photographs and there are diary entries where he's addressed to Dear Katya.
There are pieces of envelopes. There's all kind of memorabilia, pressed old flowers, those violets he talked about, letters, notes, and preciously kept.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas when it came to finding photographs for their 45th wedding anniversary for all their years for memory board,
Didn't have it
the
right. Good
party,
point.
they don't have any, and it takes a neighbor to glean what she can. But he was meticulous about saving every little thing from his experience with the other woman.
Yeah. Well, memory plays a big part of this. It's what, you know, the importance of memory. And that's strong in him. And they don't have memories of their lives together because they had no children, except they had the dogs. You see, so they just didn't feel the need for photos. And there's a very important exchange coming up about that.
I think the key that they didn't have any children is so important because here she sees that he could have had or might have had a kid.
Yeah.
And it's got to be devastating for her. We don't know why they didn't have kids, if they
No.
chose not to or if they couldn't, but they didn't.
Well, let's say they chose not to. She understands her own thinking. She doesn't understand his. He chose to because he lost a child already, and he doesn't want to have another.
I would think that if he lost a kid, he would want to have another, but
well, we don't know that.
we don't know.
You know, he's too hurt. He's injured. You know, the love of his life died along with a possible child, and he doesn't want to risk that again.
Mm-hmm.
You see, some other people might, but I think it's you know, risk avoidance is also a sign, a cause of silence between family members. Because, oh, I don't want to upset them, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to avoid talking about that problematic issue. You know, we only hurt the ones we're close to because we can. And we hurt them that way because we can get away with not saying it in some cases. So then they go to town and she goes to the travel agent. And she says, maybe you remember my husband. Did he come in? And she says, "Oh, Switzerland?" That's all there is to the scene. Again, this is understatement. You have to fill in the blanks. "Oh, yes, I remember him. He inquired about tickets to Switzerland, where he lost his wife." That's all she needs to know. And then Doris, or who made the comment about her face told everything? Susie.
I did.
Yeah, she leaves the travel agent's office, and there's a shot through the window or other windows of her alone in the town, and she's just processing. You know, you don't exactly know what's going through her head, but she's just feeling it. She now knows he was planning on going back to Switzerland. So she goes home, and at 1 hour and 12, that's 72 minutes into a 95-minute movie. There's not much left, right? She tells him, were you going to go back to Switzerland? Right. And she doesn't have to say how she found out. We don't go through that. It's like his reaction is no, I wasn't. I wasn't going to go back. And then here's the big whammy. This is a great scene. She says it's like her smell is around the house and she's not here. Right, her perfume. And that's just the small things. They're the other things. Why we have dogs. Why this, why that? This woman has driven all the decisions we have made together in our life together. So that gets her angry. But that's the little stuff. The big things too is, and this is her first big statement, I can't confide in you now because you didn't divulge completely with me. And it's like she says to him, I've been able to tell you everything I've ever thought. It's like I'm that much of an open book for you. And that's why I continue in our relationship, such as it is. Of course, he's listening really well, but she can't have that trust now because she doesn't feel as safe. Let me just read my note here.
We talk
Yeah.
about they loved each other, but I got the impression from the scene of the failed intercourse that they hadn't had intercourse in a long time.
I think you're right. It's like
It could have been since the surgery.
it could have been.
It could have been, but
And
you
it's like
don't
they're
know.
remember before that, they're having this great dance together.
Right.
And it's very loving and fun, and they're both having a great time. And instead of going to bed in her t-shirt, she wears a white linen shirt with who knows, you all
Right.
see her legs, and she's preparing for bed. So you have a sense of what's coming because they shared a real moment together that they haven't for a while.
That's the way I felt.
Yeah, and that's understatement. You don't have to say, come on, let's do it, to know they're about to do it. Why waste the time and the words? And she says, sometimes I feel I haven't been enough for you. So you see, this thing makes her have a personal sense of failure.
Mhm.
It's not just I couldn't please my man. It's that's a crude way of saying it, and it's like, it's not about pleasing your man. I couldn't engage enough with you despite my soul-bearing
I think
vulnerability.
I
What?
think her fear was that he never loved her the way he loved
Well,
Katya.
yes. No, you're right. You're right. But here, this is the line that really got to me. I have been enough for you, but I don't think you think I've been enough for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about, oh my God, you don't really appreciate me. That's it. Now that I know this, I think there's this unsatisfaction, this need that I can never fulfill for you. And you were fulfilling all the needs I thought I had as long as we had trust, because I had a partner I could lean on and share everything with. So we're really talking about what are the guts of a relationship? What are the fundamentals of sharing and caring and an open exchange and the freedom you get from being able to say anything in front of your spouse or your partner? Yet they didn't. Yet, because they preserved the fiction of this being an appropriate marriage, they both played along. This is their co-equal enablers in the silence. And I think somebody said that before, that both people are guilty of the silence. She didn't press hard enough. Then we get to, that's a big scene, and that's Friday night before the party day. And to me, that just sort of brought home how disturbing this has been for her. Her failures. I haven't been enough for you. I wanted to give you my life and make yours complete, and I failed. So Saturday morning, what happens? He brings her tea. He says, I thought I could scramble some eggs for you. And then we could take the dog for a walk together. These concrete peacekeeping things, it's guys, they want to measure, oh, what did I do wrong? Well, I'll correct all the wrongs, and it's not any one thing that he did, but it's like I said, men are from Mars and women are from Venus
Well,
sometimes.
the night before that she said we can start over.
Yes,
They
right.
agreed. So
You're
that
right.
morning it was a new day.
Starting over.
Thank you for reminding me that. I didn't have that in my notes, but he said, yes, I think I can do that. But for him, starting over is, he's starting with the concrete.
Tea and scrambled eggs.
Yeah. Well, believe me, it's a lot more than some guys do. So he thinks he's getting away with a restoration here. And so those are the amends he thinks he's making. And they walk and they talk and they talk about you love he talks about the bird calls. And there's a very hidden line here, about the little things that we love that make our lives meaningful, like the bird calls that he knows, and she thought they had that all the little moments they shared were still meaningful in the aggregate. God, I can't read my note. Oh, she goes to the garage and she looks for sheet music. I didn't understand that transition. They go into the woods on a walk, and then she's going into the garage looking for sheet music. And she takes it to the piano. We didn't know that she played piano. We didn't even see it in the house. And she plays the sheet music and she stops because it's kind of like formulaic. And then what does she play? What's the difference between the sheet music and what she plays from memory? Anybody notice? The music she plays from memory is very dark and troubling. And the sheet music was much more playful. And leaving the sheet music is like I'm abandoning the program that I thought I was playing, and I'm going back to my heart, which is now very troubled. And then she's preparing for the evening, and she puts on the necklace. It's in a gift wrap box. I suppose that's his wedding gift to her because she says, I didn't get anything for you. And the party is fun. And the photo board is really important. You don't have any record of yourselves, but we do. And
Jim, can I
Yeah.
just jump in again? I'm sorry, I saw it only last night, so it's very fresh.
Yeah.
But it came to the anniversary gift. She had first seen a watch in a shop window, Swiss watch,
Yeah.
and that was a well-placed detail.
But she doesn't buy it. She doesn't get it.
Sorry?
She doesn't buy the watch.
No,
right?
she sees it and she tells him after she's unwrapped and put on her gift, she said, I'm sorry, but I was going to get you a watch. But I didn't know what to engrave it with.
Yeah.
And he said, that's okay. I don't want to know what time it is, or I don't want to know the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot there.
Yeah. It's like a bit too meaningful for my taste, but it does describe him and who he is. And it's because he wants to forget, and remembering the time means going back into history. It's also denial of her, isn't it? I don't want to know what time it is. Well, the time is I'm with you. And then their friend Jeff speaks, and we go into his speech. And he says all the right things, doesn't he? He says, when we're young, there's some important decisions that are far more important than anything we make later in life. And I'm so glad, that I convinced her to marry me. Because it was the best thing I ever did. And then he tearfully cries, I love you. Now, remember the friend Lena said very early at tea in the film, oh, men are softies. They always cry before women.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it's coming, and he does, a little too late. And then they get into the dance, the final dance of the evening, where everybody's dancing. And she's a little bit uncomfortable, and then they get into it, and the other people join them. And he does some pretty nice moves with her, and she sort of puts a face on like she is enjoying it. Maybe she is up to a point. And then it changes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Why is the ending important to this, and what was the ending?
Well, can I get to say what I started to say
Yes,
before? Which is
yes,
that
go ahead.
I kept all through the film, I kept thinking she's gonna leave him. And
Yeah.
now having seen it twice, I still don't know if she stays. I mean, if she doesn't, she's kind of stupid because at this point, I'm not quite sure what else is in her life. And I think he really does love her. And I think he did mean his speech, but I'm still not so sure that she isn't going to tell him the next day, I'm out of here.
I think that was the filmmaker's intention. Did
Yeah.
anybody else read that a different way or the same? Risa?
Well, I think it's the words of the song that are so important, and the choice of that as your wedding song. I don't think
That was
so.
my parents' song.
That's yeah. Well, it's got some funny words up in it about what causes the smoke to get in your eyes, and if you're going to follow through with your love, or you're not going to get to follow through with your love. And she was responding to the words that were being sung all around her, and questioned that. I think, what the blazes, why was that song chosen as our wedding song?
The
Well,
last words are, when that flame dies,
Yeah,
smoke
gets
gets in your eye.
eyes.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
And
Anybody?
then I became convinced that she's going.
Well, I as I said, that was my parents' song, and my father died when I was 5, and my
Hmm.
mother was 28. So I every time I hear that song, it gives a little pang to my heart.
Yeah.
I never thought about the ambivalence of the words.
Okay. Did anybody else have a different reaction to the ending? No. Okay. Yes, Susie?
Well, I disagree with the people that think that she left, because I really do think she loved him, and she spent 45 years with him. And I think she valued those 45 years and didn't feel that his love of many years before her was a personal attack on her, because this person is dead and he was trying to make a new life, and I think that he was doing the best he could. I mean, as a woman, and having had several gentlemen in my life, it didn't make my marriage, when I finally did get married, it didn't make it any less. And it didn't make me love my husband any less because I had these gentlemen before, dates,
You
whatever
chose
they
to
were.
leave them,
I think
Susie.
time moves on.
Yeah, right. Time moves on, but those gentlemen weren't ripped from your life.
Yeah.
Something happened. It was a mutual decision, or yours, or
Yes,
theirs.
but how do we know that that wrecked his life, that relationship? I mean,
Well,
yes, it was horrible and he couldn't get over it, but it could have been something else also that came along. He loved her. He told her he loved her. They built a house together. They built a life together.
yes, they did.
I just don't think that she was going to throw it away.
Well, my reaction, I didn't think so either. I think we're left with her torment, her tormented decision about what to do next. She can't get over the betrayal. And I think somebody said in a discussion, I need films that have closure. I need to know what's going to happen next. Thank you, somebody
Yeah,
who's no longer
I
part of
think
the group.
Well,
You know who he is.
it was also very fresh. It was only 6 days.
But right, the wound was fresh.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. She had the whole, another month to go
Yeah.
and to pull it together.
Okay,
Yeah.
somebody has raised their hands. Jerry?
Jim, Jerry Raybo, I was confused by the ending
Yeah,
because at one point in the movie, she says, I love you, but I can't be with you, which is was a very telling comment to me and a very human comment.
Yeah.
And then he makes this speech, it's almost a formulaic speech, and she seems to believe it because then she's dancing, which to me was like, I'm going to be with you, even though I couldn't stand to be with you. So I was very confused.
yeah. Well, she says to him the night before, I need you to be there tomorrow. Don't
Mhm.
crap out. It's like she's putting on a face. All their friends are there. I can't disappoint people. Let's let this be just between us. So I need you to buck up and, be a mensch about this. And he says all the right things. I think she still can't bring herself to find peace with the situation.
I agree,
And,
but
and he's twirling her around and she takes her hand and she yanks it out of his and pulls it
Yeah.
down. Angry. Right. So that's where she is. And when people say, oh, there's no closure in the movie, you say, well, it still accomplished a lot because it took you to the point of indecision, the dramatic point of indecision for her. And this was a high point. Now, maybe that's just my reading into the director's decisions, but I think it was enough for him.
Jim,
Yeah.
he wasn't unfaithful to her.
No.
He had a life before her. Look at how many people in their marriages, one of the parties is unfaithful to the other one, and they stick it out. I feel that they did have an understanding of each other.
Yeah.
And I think he's learned from it.
Okay, but look at the title of the movie. It's 45 years. Her problem is
And,
not that he harbors love for his first girlfriend. It's that he's still carrying it with him all these years, and they haven't discussed it. That's the sin. Risa.
I think if a marriage loses trust, the marriage is over. And I know a young couple that had disagreements, and they went to a
Counselor, marriage
psychologist, a counselor, and the result of it was if the person who wronged you and you no longer trust that person, if she says, I'm going out to get a steak, you won't trust her. How can you stay married? And they divorced. And it was the right thing to do. He couldn't trust her anymore. And that was the end of the marriage.
Yeah.
But he didn't lie to her.
Even if you're married, love starts with basically lust when you're kids. And then it grows into love over a long period of time, and it changes.
Right.
It changes. What love is changes. It grows, it deepens, it changes. But without trust, and the big, we just had our 60th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
If people ask, what do you say? The answer is respect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would not respect a man I didn't trust. And without respect, I don't think you stay married, even if you're married for 60 years. And Stanley knows full well from the day one that we were married that if something happened and I no longer trusted him, I'm out.
Risa,
Yeah, but I didn't
he
think
didn't
that
lie
there
to
was-
her. He never lied to her. He answered
come
all
on.
of her
Whoa,
questions.
So I agree
Whoa.
with,
Wait a
Betty,
minute.
hold off, Betty, for a second.
Lying includes not telling the whole story.
Sins of omission.
It was too hurtful.
Well, but that's the point.
That's too bad.
Him.
But
He
you see,
will never forget it.
Too bad.
Too bad. You see,
Yeah.
what she's saying, Susie, what Kate says is, I was willing to expose my hurts to you. That's how intimate I am. So you should have been willing to expose how hurt you were about losing this
Losing her.
girlfriend and this child.
But he wasn't.
He
couldn't
wasn't, right.
do that.
So
Yeah,
that's
I agree
But that
with,
doesn't mean you can't trust him.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, it
I
does.
agree with Susie because I feel that, yeah, I feel that where, you know, certainly there were lacks in their communication. I didn't, you know, this all happened before he even knew her, so he never cheated on her, so that I didn't feel she couldn't trust him. I didn't feel that way at
I
all.
agree.
well,
And I've been married 55 years, and if I was to hear that you know, suddenly something about that from my husband, I'm sure it would be a shock, but I wouldn't mean I wouldn't trust him.
well, the point is,
You trusted him to conceal things from her. That's what I trust you.
yeah,
Or
no,
come to have.
it's the 45 years. She could have handled it if he said, you know, I have to tell you before we get married, this is really troubling me. I lost a child and a lover, and I love you too, and I think we could have a great life together. But that never occurred. You know,
Right.
it never occurred. So she feels
Yeah.
betrayed in that he was carrying this information she could have recovered from 45 years ago, but now she's invested so much in the relationship, he kicks out from under her feet a cornerstone of what enabled her to last the 45 years. You know, because she thought she was getting the whole truth from him, and she's getting 90%.
I also love the way this movie is very personal to each one of us.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt that while I was watching the movie, that this is touching the central core of my personal life, my personal marriage, and
Yeah,
I
right.
was constantly going over things that they said, music, etc. Where was I at that time?
Yeah.
It was very,
Well,
it was really reminiscent. It made
This
me
is why I
very
programmed it,
reminisce.
because it resonated with me 5 years ago when I saw it. And I
Yeah,
figured, aha, this is what the seniors in our group would really like, because only they can understand
exactly.
a long-term relationship, because our kids couldn't possibly have such a long relationship.
Ah,
I mean,
who
I hope they
knows?
do, but they can't now. They
Who
can't,
knows?
you know,
Jim,
it
it
has,
resonated with me so much in a
yeah,
very individual way.
yeah,
When he brings her the tea.
yeah,
So I was married, and every Sunday when my ex-husband would take Ben to religious school, he'd hang out with other people. At least that's what he said he was doing, until it was time to pick Ben up and take him home. But on this one particular Sunday, he came home with bagels and cream cheese and lox. And I said, "Oh my God, this is so nice. Thank you so much." And we sat down, and he told me he was leaving me.
Yeah.
Ah,
And he did. It
sorry to
happened,
laugh at your misfortune.
it happened to be Big Sunday. And we were making a Thanksgiving dinner at the temple, and my job was to make a huge salad. And I said, "Wow, well, I have to go now and make the salad," which I did. And it gets even weirder, because then I get to temple and I see Susan Rosenstein, and I got to tell somebody. So I tell Susan Rosenstein, and she said, "Well, that's interesting, because we split this weekend too. And you'll never believe for whom."
Wow.
So when he brought that cup of tea, I for a moment thought, oh, he's going to leave her.
It's gonna leave her.
Right, but you see, that's what a feeble gesture means. She doesn't want tea. She wants his abiding affection
Of
and
course.
commitment to her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what's wrong with it.
She's
Cindy,
lost it.
But I
Cindy?
see this as a two-way street, because when she heard about Katya, she didn't say, "Oh, tell me about her." She didn't open the communication, and then she snuck behind his back and did things. So the trust issue was on both sides. You
Well,
know, she didn't say, "Are there," I mean, when she snuck up to the attic, she
Yeah.
was
Right,
breaking the trust too.
right. Um,
And
I
it's
can't think-
also entirely possible that early on, when he told her part of it, but not the whole story, she might have said, I don't want to hear anymore. That's what she said later. So
Yeah.
she might have said it then. We don't really know.
We don't know, and so it's hard to.
Except then he continued to keep talking about the other woman in ways that were inappropriate to his current wife. And
What do you mean? Because of the dog or the other choices he made?
well, no, you know, oh, how I felt when she did this, or how it made me feel when we did that. Like it was missing currently in his current relationship.
I
mean,
didn't get that.
Yeah,
Can you think of
he made that
specific
very
moments?
clear. And that's why I said before, I thought he was surprisingly grossly insensitive.
Yeah.
But, you know, my take at the end is, yeah, I don't know if she's going to stay or not. It was about the anguish that she was
Right,
experiencing
there
and
you
the
go.
emptiness. And what was she going to do about that pain? Because she was clearly in a lot of emotional pain.
Yep.
And whether she'd kind of paper over it or not, who knows? But
You
yeah.
see,
You know, I think it was about the emptiness that she was experiencing and had come to experience in that relationship.
that's the filmmaker's goal, is to take you to her point of view at the end. What is she left with? We don't know. She doesn't know. She's just terribly hurt. And, you know, that's the fullest picture of her that we have.
But as far as the acting and everything, and I
Yeah.
don't get too involved with, you know, the details of the acting, but I thought she stole the show.
Oh, yeah, she's great. Just great.
yeah.
Just
She's
fabulous.
an English Meryl Streep, you know, is like,
Absolutely fabulous.
you know, really
Yeah,
terrific.
She
was
acted
incredible.
with her eyes, unbelievable. Her eyes moved around the room the whole time during the party, and she's looking this way and that way, and you know, I thought she was terrific.
See, this is what actors do. They don't tell the camera. They show the camera what they're feeling. So,
It was fabulous.
and the eyes are the big tell. I shouldn't use that word, but it's like that's the big indicator of what somebody's feeling. And the camera doesn't lie too much. You can be made to lie, but you know, in this case, that's the actor's tool, is that you have to show the audience what's on the inside.
Right. It was
And
excellent.
people like Meryl Streep or Charlotte Rampling or Emma Thompson, to name great women, they do that. Now, there's other kinds of great acting, and the English school like Ralph Richardson and Olivier and all that. This is declarative, you know, communication, where the script is so gorgeous and the themes are so heavy, and it's like, we don't need intimacy. We want grandeur, you know, and high-mindedness. But this is a very small movie. You know, it's really about what's inside two people's heads, plural, and it's very different. So, and again, to come back to Asian minimalism, which is a big rant of mine, it's like these films that withhold information from us force us to go and invent our own answers. And if they've done their homework the right way, we find answers that are in keeping with the scenario, with the director's intention. You know, they can't control us exactly, but they want us to play along with them and do it without telling us what to feel. They show us and they make us feel what they intend for us to feel. It's a very big difference in filmmaking. It's showing, not telling. Steve Greenberg can acknowledge that, I'm sure. And it's really where the high, look at Mike Nichols and the films and plays he's directed. Oh my God. You know, it's like The Graduate, not to mention Carnal Knowledge and so many other things that he's done and the effect he's had on film and drama. Sidney Lumet, I mean, all these Jewish guys, right? Excuse me, and they're Jewish women too. I mean, Joan Micklin Silver never really got a chance to spread her wings enough. But it's like there's this act of from a director of being a fully felt mensch, and trying to illuminate it for all of us in the audience to see and feel. You know, they're bleeding for this story to be felt by you. And that's why it takes years to mount a film and for a director or a writer to get under the skin of the material and know where it will be most fully felt. And it's like that's the art of filmmaking, to do that. Now, I'll get to you, Carol, in a second. Some filmmakers are very impersonal. Kubrick was one where he wasn't about intimacy, you know, ever, but he had the great vision. And maybe we'll see Dr. Strangelove again because it's so relevant. And there are other directors, you know, even Spielberg makes these beautifully grand, eloquent action movies that have heart, but not soul. And Witness the Fabelmans, you know, couldn't even talk about his own mother enough. And it's like this is cinema art, where you get underneath. A filmmaker gets into their own feelings and into the feelings they think the characters should have, that they connects most deeply with us. It's very humanistic, and it's very Talmudic or very Jewish, in that they're trying to connect with you based on your own experience of your life and connect it to the experience of the characters. So there's this conscious effort to pull you emotionally, intellectually, and morally into this universe they've created. So you're a partner with them, and you're playing in that same playground or field. You know, it's remarkable. Film at its best. I mean, this is what drew me to it, because I observed this is what great films did to me. You know, how they dragged me along and brought me into their universe. And some do it better than others, and some don't have to do it at all. Was Barbie profound?
No.
No, but to the extent that that young women took their young male friends to as an acid test, a litmus test, to see if they were woke enough and feminist enough to be worthy of them, I think that's a great film. You know, every film has its own purpose and can accomplish something in its own way. And I'm sorry it didn't get more recognized than it did. If you'll let me carry on my rant about the Academy. That film.
Jim, I just wanted to underscore what you were saying, that here was a movie where there weren't a lot of words, but terrific acting and showing of feelings. Look how much discussion we had here today. Almost everybody participated and had something to say. So I think that says a tremendous amount about the film.
Absolutely. You know, who was at the braid last night at Temple Isaiah? Judy, I saw you there, Judy.
Oh, I didn't see you. That
Yeah.
was terrific.
It was a crowd. It was a program on anti-Semitism, about 12 short pieces on examples of it.
We'll talk about it. It's coming to Wilshire on Sunday.
Oh, okay. Do see it. It's one of their most successful.
Oh, I will.
I could walk to Isaiah, so it was a pleasure.
Yeah. Carol, you should go to Wilshire Boulevard. It's at the Irmis campus on Olympic, right?
Right.
I think
Yeah.
so. It was terrific, I thought.
Yeah.
I want to comment on Risa's share about the original post. I love the aftermath, but tearing up the postcard, that you had real feelings of this gesture that was sent to your husband from someone from his past. At that point, that's all you knew and all you felt.
Exactly.
I also think that loving relationships may happen differently from one person to one couple to another. Lust, love, they don't have to be mutually exclusive or timing and developing in any particular way. My late husband and I were married 11 months after our first date, and it seemed like forever. But after we were married and completely madly in love, comes a little memento from the girlfriend before I came into his life, with a love message and a little dried flower. Hello.
Oh, nice.
Now, she was Danish. So what did I do in my 20s? Something irrational. I wanted to out-Danish her. I found out from Solvang where we could get the pumpernickel from the Scandinavian deli on Pico, made a complete smorgasbord, served aquavit and beer, and ended up with other 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and because my husband was older than, they were sleeping on couches in the morning. No one knew how to drink this stuff, but I was going to out Danish her. Why? Why? My life was happy. My love was intact. It's just one of those human reactions that makes no sense, but it was so over the top. It meant, you know, and you're tearing up this postcard and I'm making ham rolls with asparagus and hollowing out tomatoes for shrimp salad and a lasting Swedish meatloaf recipe. Why? I don't know.
He wasn't even Swedish.
Yeah, she was Danish, but
She was Danish.
was Scandinavian.
Okay. But Risa, the tearing up of the photograph is the same as her ripping her hand out of his at the end, at the dance. You know, no, I can't tolerate this, you know, and it may not be rational, it may not be merited, but it's what you feel. And in a way, that's what Andrew Hay has done with this film, is that he doesn't make judgments about anybody, but he shares their feelings with us. And that's why I want to see this next film. It's not really about gayness or anything like Maestro, so don't be afraid of it. It's really about, I don't know what it's about. I've just read the critics and they're not clear enough, but I want to see it because this guy's really good, you know, and he's done a lot of television. He's English, and you know, that's why I haven't seen much of him. I think this is the first domestically distributed thing he's directed since I mean All of Us Strangers is the first thing since this film. Definitely somebody.
I'm gonna send you an email that I got today, the New York Times, and the headline is "Why Barbie is a Bad Movie."
I'd love to read it because frankly,
Okay.
I've been very discouraged with the Times coverage of Barbie and Maestro. I think that most people totally misread Maestro, as you know, from 2 weeks ago.
I wasn't there, unfortunately, but I loved Maestro. I loved it.
It's the most, if you talk about cinema as language, it is the most eloquent, beautifully told film we've seen in a long, long time.
And I
It's
tell
visual.
everybody, see it in a theater with the best sound
Yeah,
system
it's really
possible.
important.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't watch it online.
Well, if you have to see it
Right.
you can, but it's really a theatrical experience.
A
But
masterpiece.
it's too old.
Not Barbie, though.
No, not Barbie.
Well, again,
I
Risa,
thought it was terrible.
I don't think it was terrible. I just thought it was much ado about nothing, which is
Nothing.
essentially what the New
No,
York
no.
Times says.
That's how I felt about it.
okay,
Sorry.
open up your minds because you don't have to open up your hearts to Barbie because there's no heart
There's
there.
no heart.
It's an intellectual film. It's a polemic about male expectations of femininity. And think of your granddaughters, Risa.
Oh, God.
No, not that they're like Barbie,
No, I understand.
but they should be like Barbie at the end and have that perspective on what to expect from a man and their own lives. That's what it's about. But it's a satire. Satire is political. It's abstract political comedy. And it's not meant to be real. Barbie was surreal. And it's about ideas. It's not about characters. You know, the characters are all symbolic. You don't know Ken. You don't know Barbie. You know, it's like they're all comic books, but worlds in collision say something about our world. So really, you talk to your granddaughters about that film, okay? And ask them, you know.
They didn't like it.
Jim,
Yeah.
Jim, what is your thought about why Maestro got zero acclaim in any of the awards ceremonies?
Well, no. Both he and she got Best Actor nominations for the Oscars.
Not director, though?
No.
Oh,
So wrong.
wrong.
That's the slight.
But he didn't win.
Well, no,
the Oscars haven't
Hasn't
happened
happened yet. Oscars haven't happened yet.
Oh,
March 10th.
okay. I hear you. But from what we've already seen, the Golden Globes
Yeah.
and the other one, the movie wasn't even mentioned.
I'll tell you why.
Tell me why.
It's too smart. It's too intelligent. It's too sophisticated.
Oh, come on.
The storytelling is very sophisticated. It allows you to maintain engagement It forces you to, but it expects you to accept a lot. It expects you to exclude a lot. You know, we went 2 weeks ago, we went over all the things the film isn't and all the aspects of his life it didn't cover
Yeah.
because it was about his relationship with his wife and about how the world, you know, when he proposes to her the first night they meet each other, basically it's a proposal. He says, the world expects us, you and me both, to be only one thing, and we're not. We're whole people. And he proceeded to live his life as one whole unique person, no matter who he hurt. And, you know, it was a bit juvenile at the same time. It shows a lot of integrity. And that's what allowed him to create such great music. He was strict with himself. And, you know, and it didn't extend to his family because he hurt them a lot, especially her. I just think that it was too old school in many ways, even though the actual telling of that film was extremely, I don't say elegant, it's complicated, but it was graphically and cinematically very creative, as much as Barbie was in its own way. And the transitions were amazing, the connections it made between scenes. It was just marvelous. Now, maybe it bore too many marks of old school filmmaking. Whereas after Anatomy of a Fall and Past Lives, there are these
Poor
understated,
things.
you know, intellectual pieces that the Academy now recognizes as thoughtful filmmaking. They were thoughtful. I'm not going to, you know, I like aspects of both of them, but I don't think they accomplished as much as Maestro. This is the kind of filmmaking prowess we haven't seen in decades.
Right.
That's my feeling. Okay, so let's talk about the future, our future. We didn't show the Levees of Monticello tonight because we just couldn't get the check to the distributor in time to give you a week to see it. But by next week, I think the check will have arrived and I'll be able to give you. Do you all know what Vimeo is? Vimeo.com. It's a platform for streaming films and film clips. You will all get a Vimeo link to the site, and then you'll get a password that's valid for 1 week only. And it's going to start on Friday night, kick off the Shabbos with it, and it's going to end on Thursday night. So you have 7 days to see this film, including one weekend. Levees of Monticello is very interesting because it's about Jefferson and the estate of Monticello and the Jewish family that saved it. But what really redeems it, sorry if you didn't know that, it's really interesting in that respect, especially if you've been to Monticello. But what redeems it is that Monticello is the place where the Proud Boys paraded in Charlottesville about Jews will not replace us.
Wow.
So the film morphs into a comparison between the anti-Semitism that the Levees had to endure while maintaining the estate for 89 years, longer than Jefferson lived in it. You know, they were like, there was one buyer after he died and he couldn't handle it. So the Levees bought it from that person, and that family owned it for 89 years and lived in it until they were forced out by anti-Semites. And in time, the first Jewish man who bought it was the most senior ranking officer in our Navy after the Revolution. His name, I think, was Josiah Levy, and his son then took it over after he did. But they renovated it. It was in disrepair, and they saved it from collapse and maintained it. And now it's owned by the Monticello Trust, which is a very different beast. But the story of our country's treatment of this family is an emblem of anti-Semitism. And they saved us as national treasure. I mean, for so many reasons, this is a landmark. So the film's success is not in the first hour, it's in the last 30 minutes. So it appears to be just a routine documentary about the history of the estate. And then it talks about the meaningfulness of what the family did. So that's why I decided to program it for us. And
Thank you.
you know, it'd be fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to see. It's gorgeous. You know, they had full access to the site. And, you know, it's basically a talking heads documentary telling the history in the first hour. But then it really goes into filmmaking gear. and starts making comparisons to our present day. So
Will
that's
we be able to see it, Jim, even though we don't have Vimeo? Will we be able
you.
to?
Anybody can
have
have
the
Vimeo.
link.
No, you don't have to subscribe to Vimeo. You
Just-
get a link,
Oh, okay.
free admission, even though you're Jewish. You get in.
Gotcha. Good.
It's like anything. It's like you want to use my Amazon account? Here's my password. It's that kind of thing, and it's easy. We're paying hint hint by the way, when I was at University Synagogue, I raised $7,500 through film donations and events, and that carried forward to Wilshire Boulevard, and we have an account. Now that we're part of Wilshire Boulevard, there's an account of now about $7,200 for film education. And you recall the Jonathan Sarna film we did about Jews in blue and gray, Jewish soldiers in blue and gray, about the Civil War Jews. That was paid for out of that budget item, and we're paying for that because I just didn't want you to have to go through the hoops of it's on HiFlix, and you have to pay $7. You get it the first month free, but then you got to cancel it. And I said, no, we'll pay the $200 and we get carte blanche. Any participant in the film group will get a link. So that's that one. And so I will bring that to us as soon as possible, hopefully the next one. But here's the thing. Next month is Black History Month. And I really try and bring our attention onto the connection between Jews and Black people in this country, because we're all victims of diaspora, and now we're victims of, I feel pretty secure here in my nice West LA home, and at Wilshire Boulevard. By the way, Wilshire Boulevard spends $2 million a year on security. If you watch the video, these guys have Glock pistols on their belts. They're fully trained, paramilitary style. So if anybody wants to come in and mess with us, these guys are going to be shooting.
Is that the same for Irma's campus?
All
Yes,
free.
it's all free.
That's why it's $2 million.
We need it.
Even
Well-
Isaiah had so much more
The point
security than
is,
they used to.
there's a video on the training. It's basically salesmanship, but it shows you, these guys with guns going through rooms, like there is an Israeli raid in Gaza. And it's impressive, though. I mean, these are all paramilitary people with true military training. And I talked to one of them when I went to meet with one of the Hannah Elkins, the new young rabbi at Resnick campus the other day. And I was talking to one of the guys who was like the supervisor, and we talked about their training. And he said it's really serious stuff, and they're all armed, but hopefully they know how to use them. And that's what I told them. I said, it's not about the weapon, it's about what's up in here to deal with the people who are intruding. And he agreed. But how did I get onto that?
Hopefully they never have to use them.
But that's the point. But the point is that if it takes $2 million for people to feel safe in the synagogue property, then it's worth it to the congregation.
Yes.
That's one thing you're paying for. Is you should feel safe. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be, right? Not always is. So we will feel safe, even if you're not paranoid about the boogeyman coming to get you because you wear a star around your neck. But let me go to my spreadsheet, and I'll talk about some of the other films. Oh, Black History Month. There are two terrific films for us to see next month. And in a way, that's why I'd like to postpone The Levees of Monticello, which is more evergreen. And they're current films. First that I want to show is American Fiction, starring Jeffrey Wright.
Great film.
Great film. And it's about a Black author at a university who is asked to take a leave of absence because he fought the overly politically correct stances of the university, and he can't get his next book published because it's too intellectual. So he writes a book in street slang about an escaped convict and his life, and it's a smash hit. And so he's it's a send up of the publishing system and progressive wokeness, overly progressive, over
Give the
wokeness.
name again, please.
American Fiction, and it's
Fiction,
on
right.
Amazon. We're going to see it in February and discuss it. And there's a lot of pieces missing. It's one of these things you can pick apart the plot, but the ideas are there and they're very well expressed. And this film is really about the ideas of where we are and what the plight of a thoughtful, intellectual Black person is in this country. There's several good Black writers in the New York Times opinion pieces. Probably the brightest, I think, is John McWhorter, who's a linguist. Yeah, right, Judy. He's like brilliant.
The best.
And there's Jamil Bowie and Charles Blow, and they're all worth reading. But McWhorter's the most thoughtful, the best, the most scholarly, yet brings it down to earth. And then Jamil Bowie is the most passionate. And Charles Blow is always good. Can't criticize him. He just has less of a presence these days. So the second picture is going to be Rustin, no relation to me, Rustin, and the lead actor in it who plays Bayard, not Bayard, but Bayard Rustin, is Domingo. What's his first name? Carmen?
Coleman.
Coleman Domingo.
He
And
got an Oscar nomination for that role.
got an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. He was a confidant of Martin Luther King. He was gay. And he was the architect of the March on Washington, where King gave his I Have a Dream speech. Great, great script. The writing is just fabulous. You just drool over the words and how you listen to Rustin speak, and it's like, oh my God, this guy was so smart and so brilliant. And
What is that on? Is that on Netflix? I hope not.
it's at Netflix or IMDb. Not on Amazon.
Amazon?
I think it's Netflix.
I don't have Netflix anymore.
Well, it's worth $8 a month. It really is.
What?
It's worth $8 a month.
Yeah, with ads.
Yeah, drives you crazy.
Okay,
Me too.
we'll see you on the next one,
I
Judy.
watched this movie today on Hulu because I let my Amazon Prime go too. And all of a sudden there were ads. I went, what? I didn't know there were going to be ads.
You have to buy Hulu.
I don't mean Hulu. I meant
Amazon.
Vudu.
Voodoo.
Which is free.
Voodoo. Well,
but it isn't free because you watch ads.
Well, look, it's a capitalist world. Somebody's got to pay.
Someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So look, you go to your email, you go to the bathroom, you get a snack, you know.
So we're talking about February 8th for the next movie?
Yeah, I've got to get approval from Susan Nannis on that, but it'll be two Thursdays from tonight.
Right.
And then 4 Thursdays from tonight.
Right.
The 2 Black films.
And which is the first one that we're doing? Will
I think it'll be American Fiction.
first? Yeah.
American Fiction.
Okay,
And,
I'm going to call it.
does anybody know when the Oscars are?
March 10th.
Okay, so we'll
Day
see.
after my birthday.
Yeah,
That's why.
we'll see the Coleman Domingo film before the Oscars, so you'll be really up on it. Really great performance, and the producers of the film were the Obamas, among others. So very, very telling. And there's lots more. I mean, all these films are now of the season are now coming to streaming, so we'll be able to see them. It's like December, January is tough because all the great films aren't available. We made it through this winter, this late fall, but we'll have a bunch of good films, you know, and I'm just stacking them up. I want to query the group about 2 films I wanted to show together, not in the same night. One is called 8½" by Federico Fellini. Many of you have seen it years ago.
Years ago.
Years.
50 years ago.
50 years ago, right.
50.
Okay, this is about the nature of art and genius, and what is it about? How do we reach people through this magic medium of cinema? It's about a film director who's like searching for his next film, trying to make it, you know, between visits from his mistress and his wife. And it's not just about that. It's one of Fellini's best films, without a doubt. And there's another film that's very much like it, also in black and white, an early Arthur Penn film starring a very young Warren Beatty, who plays a nightclub stand-up comic whom the mob is pursuing for his debts,
What's the name of it?
called Mickey One. And Arthur Penn made this before Bonnie and Clyde and Missouri Breaks. And it's really a statement about art and freedom and paranoia. And you just got to live your life, regardless of who's chasing you, because it's your life and it's all you have. That's all you have. And in many ways, these films are parallel, which is why I wanted to show them. You know, you tell me, would you see two films for one discussion, or do you
Sure.
want one week at a time?
Absolutely.
Sure, we would.
Well, but we can't do both films justice. You know, I'd rather do Mickey One full justice because Fellini, you can just, it's such an abstraction, but it's wonderful, delightful, funny, beautiful. You know, so I don't know. I think we'll spend a whole month on them if you don't mind. Is anybody opposed to that, Mitch?
I like one at a time, and I wanted to ask you, why did Boys in the Boat not get any nominations?
What film?
Boys in the
Boys
Boat.
in the Boat. I
Um,
haven't seen it.
I loved it.
it was a lot of fun. I saw it. It's beautiful. It really was just about the race. It wasn't even as much about the boys' struggle or the class struggle between the senior boat and the junior boat or the other boats. I think it was a little too sanitized.
The book was great. The book was great. I don't think the
That's what
movie-
people say.
Oh, the book was wonderful.
Well,
Okay,
the
the
author
other
of the
book-
book, the author of the book, when he was being interviewed with George Clooney, he said, you know, I know how it ends. I know the story. I wrote the book. He said, but the way it looked visually, the way it was edited, the way it was
Oh, it's
directed,
a lovely film.
it brought him to tears
Of course.
several times.
Because his vision was preserved in the film. That's how he saw the film when he was writing it.
Wow.
I just don't know that it accomplished as much as these other films. Now, one film, if you've seen it, Flowers of the Killer Moon, it's worth 3.5 hours. Wear a pad if you can't go that long. It was a joke, but it's true. And that was a film that deviated from the book far more than Boys in the Boat. My wife read the book. It's a great book. And the book is told from the point of view of the investigators of this tragedy of killing the Osage Indians and stealing their wealth. And it's told through the unfolding of through the investigators' eyes. The film takes an opposite approach by making Leonardo DiCaprio and De Niro the instigators of the crime and the criminality and the cruelty, and you know it right up front. So it's a process film of how do they manipulate the oil wealth to their own hands. It's still a great film. It's still one of Scorsese's best. It is profound. And the performances are very good. Lily Gladstone was good, but you know, she just was herself the whole time. She plays a good dying woman, I have to admit. And she's empathetic, but people are loving her performance. She may win Best Actress, female actor, sorry. But that's another instance where the film deviates from the book, but it still has its own merits. And I think, you know, we can't say, well, it wasn't really true. Desi and Lucy didn't really have J. Edgar Hoover call the show that night. You know, these are movies. These are flights of fantasy. And it's true when you're dealing with biographical material or semi-historical material, you should be as true as possible. But there's no reason to be sticklers for the absolute truth because it's kind of elusive anyway. So, you know, you have to allow these filmmakers to play with the material and produce something new. Carol?
Oh, I was just gonna say good night.
Oh. Oh my God, I've gone on. I do. My
No,
wife
I
said,
love your class.
well, it's too much
Wonderful.
information, but there's so much. I mean, this is, this is what film can do, what it has meant to our culture and history and the world history. It's like it's always been there with us in one form or another for 100 plus 100 years. And we have to acknowledge that there's a lot to be learned from studying this, and a lot to be learned about ourselves from watching these. Mostly the way I teach it is, how do you feel? What did it make you feel? And then we go from there.
Jim, you're kicking Monticello down the road, right?
I'm kicking, that'll be March. Really, I mean, yeah, okay, it's arbitrary that it's Black History Month, but why not do it,
Okay.
And maybe we'll get some extra viewers because of that. Reese, are you waving goodbye or want to say something?
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. Good night,
Thank you,
Jim.
thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night,
Thank
Jim. Great
you.
show.
Good group.
Was a great discussion, everyone.
Yeah, it was
Really
great.
good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you all.
Good night.